This is called the major axis, and it represents, or major axis, and it represents the widest area of the ellipse, the widest measurement on the ellipse. If you perfectly bisect that line, this is called the minor axis. All right? Now, this is what I want you to drill into your heads about ellipses. These two lines, the minor and the major axis, they are always bisecting each other perfectly. No exceptions. Okay, always bisecting each other, no exceptions. They are always meeting at a 90-degree angle. Perpendicular, no exceptions. And they are always symmetrical vertically and horizontally, so that all four of these quadrants are truly equal. Okay, so if you come in next week and you draw your ellipses and you draw them the wrong degree, you draw them in the wrong place, they will still look more correct than this if you pay attention to those three ideas. Always perpendicular, always bisecting, always equal quadrants. So this also takes some of the pressure off. It actually makes it a lot easier to draw them, because all you have to do when you draw is you have to focus on keeping them kind of equal. You see what I mean? Yeah.
So would you say ellipsis is kind of more a part about perspective that you feel it more than like, because you can make a cube with mechanical.
Actually, I'd say no. Because I'm going to show you ways to diagram them and to, so they're absolutely as precise as cubes. But the problem is when people go to sketch them, it's really hard to sketch curved lines to a particular, point. You guys, to give you an idea, industrial designers are fabulous with their ellipses, or they used to be. At Art Center, they used to train the industrial designers in their first semester to draw ellipses. And the way they would do it is they would basically make them memorize ellipses. And their test at the end of the semester was the teacher would come up and would go like this. Put 2 points and would say 30 degrees. And they'd have to go and not have a tail like that. They'd have to be able to go whack. Okay, and they were graded based upon their ability to do that. Okay, so they would spend their whole first semester with an ellipse guide. They'd have an ellipse template, and they'd be going inside the ellipse template, and then they'd take the template away and then go, until they just had it in their hand. And I'll show you some tips next week on how to draw them. Okay, I've got some tips similar to like drawing straight lines, and I've got some little body mechanic tricks that will help. But let's not worry about that today. That's going to be next week. Now, my point though is, do you see that by having these, by focusing on the symmetry and the axes, do you see that the ellipses look pretty good? Now, this is also helpful. Let's say you're drawing a coffee cup. Measure the width. Okay? Measure the width of the top of the coffee cup. Draw a line in between. Measure the height, and you go, oh, okay. It's about that big relative to the length. Okay, you can now go like this. And you have the top of your coffee cup and it looks pretty good. You see what I mean? Yeah.
So when you're trying to guess, like, oh, it looks like this, would you actually like do the size?
Yeah. Just measure it. Because if you measure it and you say, okay, well that, if I take a pencil and I'm looking at this CD, and I go, okay, well that's the width, and that's the height, okay, it's about 40%, so it's about a 25-degree ellipse. And I just could do that, yeah.
I was wondering if you can go over this one concept I saw in one of the books. Like, it said if you're drawing like an ellipse in a certain like 1 point or something like that, like it said like don't confuse drawing the diagonal center point as the point where you divide up.
We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's going to come up in about 40 minutes or so. Okay, so my point is focus on the symmetry. Okay? And by next week, if you get to a point where all of your ellipses, you're watching your axes, they bisect each other, they're perpendicular, and they're symmetrical, your ellipses will be in pretty good shape. Now, there's one additional thing you might screw up, and that is the orientation of the ellipse. Okay, and we'll talk about how to do that as well. But if you just get the symmetry, you're ahead of 90% of the other art students out there. If you get the symmetry and the orientation, you're ahead of 98% of them. Honestly. You guys, remember how I gave you the test with the cube with the ellipses on each side? Okay, like I was saying, that test would be failed by by a huge majority of art teachers in the country, and that's pathetic. And by the end of this lecture today, you'll know how to do that, and you should be able to do that perfectly. Now, let me show you an additional thing. I got this on the website.